Hey, y'all, welcome to the Dangerous Faith YouTube channel. And depending on how the audio is on this video, we might also upload it to our podcast as well. I hope everyone's doing all right. With me, I have the one and only Hunter. Hunter is a dear friend of mine. He was my best man at my wedding all the way back in 2020, and I love him a lot. He means a lot to me. He's just been an incredible friend. Now, we are going to talk a little bit about his deconversion. At one point, he was a Christian, and now he's not, and he's going to tell his story a bit about that. But before we get started, I'll introduce him. Hunter, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you?
I am doing great. It's been a busy day, but I'm glad to be able to talk with you. Very excited. So we're going to go ahead and jump in, Hunter. First question. All right. So you were a Christian, but there was also a time before that when you weren't a Christian at the very beginning. So there's like a conversion and then a deconversion. So let's talk about that. Can you
Yeah,
describe your life before you became a Christian?
that's a pretty broad spectrum of time, but I would say like the time right before I became a Christian, like that last few years, beforehand.
Yeah.
I would say that I was in kind of I call it an in-between place. I was in transition. I had graduated high school, but I had been in community college. We didn't really feel like a full transition into that like college life at that time.
Yeah.
Um, I was just kind of not really trying as hard as I could in community college. I didn't really feel like I had a path in life. I felt like um, I was lacking direction and purpose.
Yeah.
And I would say that in general felt kind of similar to like my general disposition for my life at that point was just a lack of direction, a lack of purpose, or and a desire to find a purpose and higher meaning.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay, so lack of purpose, lack of general direction. And then from there, you eventually became a Christian. And why was that? What led you to becoming a Christian from that life situation?
yeah. I mean, well, it was one person who kind of got me started on that. He was a coworker of mine named his name was also Nate. Uh, but
Okay.
he was a coworker of mine, and he had been evangelizing to me on and off because I was a lifeguard, so we had a lot of time to ourselves to talk and parse out questions and things like that. And I just felt like he, really took an interest in me and cared about me, and his family was very welcoming, and so it was just kind of like a slow introduction to things, but not only like the warmth and welcomeness that he showed me, but I also felt like as I started to believe more and understand more, I saw it as a purpose and a path and a higher calling that I
Hmm.
had been looking for.
Okay.
Um, so,
So it kind of filled something in your heart. Maybe there's some fulfillment there that you found in Christianity. And I guess from there, as you were a Christian during that time span, I guess what was that like? What was it like being a Christian for you? Like what did it feel like? What did you think like, if that makes any sense?
yeah, I mean, I feel like I really grew and developed and matured as a person over time, through being a part of the church and being a Christian. But
Yeah.
I, I I don't know. I mean, it was everything to me. I
Yeah.
was at church all the time. Almost all my friends were from church.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, even when I went off to college, like I sought out another group, another church group.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was, yeah, it was everything. I was very involved.
and everything. Some of my sweetest memories, I remember you and I serving at the church in different capacities, a young adult ministry, just a lot of good memories with events and discipleship, sweet times for me for sure. And okay, so now we're going to go on the other side. When did you start to lose your faith? Was it like a specific moment that you can point to, or was it a process? What are your thoughts there?
It was definitely a process. I felt like I had always had doubts and questions, but
Yeah.
those started to widen over time, and I stopped being able to kind of justify to myself, both theologically and philosophically, you know, I couldn't really like parse out these problems that I was having.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was just kind of a slow process that really started to ramp up in my senior year of college as I was leaving.
Mm.
That was really started to start having some pretty serious doubts.
So it was a
Yeah.
process that maybe quickened through about your senior year of college, from what I'm hearing.
Mhm.
So, all right, this gets into the nitty gritty. What are the reasons why you left the faith? What are the reasons?
Yeah. Well, I had several questions that I couldn't really find satisfactory answers to. So
Hmm.
that was number one. Like they just kept coming up, and I would ask several different people, um, who are educated, seminarily educated, um, and they just didn't really have any satisfactory answers. So those were kind of those like potholes, in my faith. And people kept just saying, "Oh, just pray about it, just read and try and look for answers and just hold out, have faith, right?" But you know, when you have a pothole, right, like you have to fill it in with something substantial, or
Yeah.
else, as you keep driving over that pothole, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, so and eventually, it becomes undrivable, right? So there were those questions,
Hmm.
but then my confidence in our ability to actually like find and comprehend objective truth um, really started to ebb and like um, wane over time.
Yeah.
Uh, and I also felt, but like kind of what led me down that path was also my increasing doubts and uh, lack of confidence in the biblical canon and the historicity and
Hmm.
integrity of the Bible.
Okay. Okay. So from the sound of it, it no, it doesn't sound like something that there was like this traumatic event, something horrible happened to you inside the
No,
church. It
no,
was mainly intellectual. Is that right?
yeah, yeah, it was almost entirely intellectual. Yeah,
Okay. And so going off your answer, it was things like how can we trust the Bible? How do we know the Bible's true? How do we know the Bible comes from God? Was it those kind of questions?
yeah, I would say questions like that, as well as just theological questions that there are some inconsistencies.
Okay. Okay. And then so that kind of speeds up more and more, eventually like a avalanche or a snowball, whatever analogy you want to use. And then you decide, okay, I'm no longer a Christian. I do not identify. When you left, what was life like? What changed for you once you no longer called yourself a Christian?
Yeah. So when I graduated college, I had been, like I said, super involved in the church and super involved in, different uh, youth groups, young adult groups, student groups is probably a better word. Um, that had been a huge part of my life. It took up most of my time.
Yeah.
And I felt kind of like subconsciously I was like holding out because I was part of this leadership and there weren't a lot of guys to lead, these groups. And so once I left, and I was also having this kind of existential crisis, crisis of faith, I felt extremely lonely. I mean, it was very difficult for me because not only was I away from my friends, I moved to a new city. I had a new job that I didn't really like very much.
Yeah.
I didn't like the place that I was living. It was just like a whole lot of negative things that were happening in my life at the time, but that kind of exacerbated that difficulty. But it
Mm.
was it was also the fact that like when you are a person of like devout faith, um, you put everything into that. You put your identity. That's where your friends are. That's where your whole life is, literally. Right? You say you're born again. You died to your old selves, and you're born again to a new self, um, or as a new person. And so that all hinges on Jesus's resurrection and your faith in that. And
Yeah.
so when that crumbles away, right, everything else crumbles away too. So you have to, once you fall, you have to get up and reconstruct everything.
Hmm.
Um, so that was extremely difficult for me, and I also felt like it wasn't something that I could really talk about.
Yeah.
Um,
Hold on
I
one
don't.
moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
My cat is deciding to meow a lot, so hold
Yeah,
on.
no worries.
Hey, why are you like this? Okay. Hello, everyone. This is Finn, and he's a little monster. So let me go put him somewhere, and I'll be back. Hunter, you keep with where you are. Apologize for the
Mhm.
interruption. I'm so sorry about that, Hunter. Keep on going.
Yeah, no worries. Um, I would say that like what also made it more difficult was I just kind of felt isolated and I felt also scared to come and talk about like what my conclusions were and what I had come to. So it took time and I had told select people about it, but it took a long time and there was a lot of kind of suffering in between. So it was just extremely difficult to kind of parse all that out
Yeah.
and to kind of come to grips with that because I was just kind of going at it alone at that time.
Mm. Going at it alone, and like you said, a loss of community, identity, and that's difficult to rebuild and takes time. And so I'm sorry to hear that. Uh, what would you call yourself now? So you can use there's atheist, agnostic, seeker, none, None. What would you call yourself now as a label? If what would be the most accurate descriptor?
I would definitely say agnostic.
Agnostic.
I think that agnostic, but I do still believe that there was a beginning to the universe and there had to be a power of some kind. I believe in like the cosmological argument, but I don't believe that it is something that we can understand or know.
Okay. So would you be open to like that sounds a little bit like deism, maybe
Mhm.
God started the universe, like wound up the watch, whatever analogy, just let it run. Would it be somewhat deistic, or is that a little too strong?
See, that's the thing. Is like I feel like that is a little bit too strong, but
Yeah.
a power beyond our comprehension, outside of space and time, right? Like it is kind of what you call it, but I would say that we can't know what that is or what that means.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Okay, so maybe a tad strong, but something out there that started the
yeah,
universe.
yeah.
Uh, would you be open? Let's say somehow those intellectual questions are answered and you found some stance on the Bible, you're like, oh, I could agree with that. And there were maybe some aspects of Jesus, the resurrection, the existence of God that you found a little bit more convincing. Would you be open to coming back to the faith, or do you feel like that door's pretty closed?
I think that I never say never, right? But um, I think that for me, I'm pretty skeptical at this point in time, and I don't know if I'd ever be as fervently about it, as I was before. So
True.
maybe, but I don't
Maybe.
know. I just have heavy reservations.
You sound very wary,
Mhm.
very wary to commit yourself to that level that you were before, which makes sense. You don't want to get burned. You don't want to, have another massive shift in your life, I'd imagine. And so that makes sense. So now we're going to shift a little bit. As you know, Hunter, I love apologetics. And so we're going to talk a little bit about apologetical type issues. And the next question for you is, what would you tell someone who says that without God, there doesn't seem to be a fulfilling purpose to life, hope for the future, like a big picture reason to live, and all those kind of things? What would you say to someone who would tell you that?
Yeah, I definitely was confronted with that when I first left. But I guess it's like to put it bluntly, and I'll expand on this in a second, but like to put it bluntly, like you either find a purpose to live or you die. You can't live without hope. You can't live without a purpose
Yeah,
to to continue on, right?
yeah,
If you're looking for a one-to-one direct replacement for what you find in God, like if you want a roadmap to your life and someone who's telling you what to do, I don't think you're going to find that, uh, unfortunately, right?
yeah,
But because the conclusion that I came to is because there is no higher purpose, because there is no, you know, guy in the sky telling you what to do, right? Like you can do whatever you want, and it's very freeing and it's also very scary at the same time. It's kind of like, right, you're, uh, I don't know, I guess you're like being pulled along in a tugboat, versus like being out in the open ocean by
yeah,
yourself, and you can go anywhere. Um,
yeah,
so for me, I realized that because there is no like higher calling to follow and no moral imperative to do things a certain way, you know, you you're free to do what you want, and that also kind of helped me because there were always people that I was comparing myself to or things that I wanted to do that other people were doing or whatever. But I don't really feel that that is like as much of a stressor for me anymore because life is a series of trade-offs.
mhm,
And, in order to get a lot of money, you have to work hard or be an heiress or like whatever, but at the end, everyone dies and everyone is forgotten.
yeah.
So, you whatever you can find that gives you fulfillment, like, I see no problem with that.
Got you. So tell me if I summarize this correctly. Without God, there might not be this overarching purpose to life that applies to everyone, like an ultimate meaning. But instead, we kind of can pick and choose our meaning or our purpose. We're kind of like, we're out on the water, we can decide where we're going to go. And you found that with this way, being agnostic, there's less of a comparison. Like, oh, I gotta match this person, I gotta do that. I got, so it's like you feel freer in a way. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty good summary of that.
Okay. Well, good. Now I sent you a couple. I should have sent you this days ago, but I'm gonna talk with you about the what I call the secular argument for being religious, which sounds funny, but I'll explain. Study Studies show, sometimes I want to qualify, I'm not saying this applies to everyone, that on average, religious people, not again, speaking generally, on average, religious people tend to give a little more to charity, tend to uh, let's see, adopt at a higher rate. I think evangelicals adopt children at twice the rate of the average population, I think. There's a link in America between being religious and being happy, compared to not being religious and being happy. Like the rates of happiness are higher, so on and so forth. You could talk a little bit about volunteering, lifespan, that in the US, it tends to be, those statistics look better the more religious you are. And so I have a secular argument for you, Hunter, why you should join your local church. All right, here it is. If you found a mainline Protestant church that, let's say, had a very progressive view of the Bible, you know, had maybe good teachings, you don't have to believe the miracles. Jesus was like a good man who tried to do good for the world. Um, let's see, that that's our goal, that we're just trying to be good people and help those around us. And this way you kind of get to be religious, but you don't have to like believe all those things in the Bible that you're having trouble believing. So let's say miracles are out the door. um and this way you have community, you can be kind of religious, there are symbols and rituals, some things you might miss, I'm not sure, holidays that are Christianish. uh let's say a mainline Protestant denomination like the United Methodist Church or Lutheranism or United Church of Christ, that you're then going to be able to reap some of those benefits. You'll tend to be among those who are happier, and they give more and they serve more, and lifespan tends to be longer. That you should join a church or some religious organization for those reasons. What do you think? Convincing, not convincing?
Well, I think that like what I would be curious about is, right, more religious, you said. If you're more religious, then the more likely you are to do these things. Whereas I'm not sure if this study says it is, not religious, religious, somewhat religious. You know what I mean? If it's a sliding scale or if it's just, I don't know, like if it's just a binary choice. But I guess I would ask like what counts as religious, right? Is it just going to church, being part of a church community, or is it believing?
I would say being a part of a church community is a major aspect of this, because
Mhm.
let's be honest, a lot of Christians in the United States are what I call functional atheists. Other than the hour or two they're at church on a Sunday, if they even go, the rest of their life, they look just about identical to non Christians. So I think being a part of a church community would be a major factor in being considered religious.
Yeah. I mean, in my estimation, number one, like I think that like the reason why people donate more to charity, I also think that like churches could be counted as a charitable organization in these studies, but regardless, even if it wasn't the case, I think donating more to charity, doing more volunteer work, adopting more is purely based on their belief, right? Belief that this is morally good or morally right. This is what I should be doing. And depending on the denomination or if you count Catholicism is a denomination or a whole other sect or whatever, right? Like, you could even some people even view it as like, oh, I'm basically hedging my bets and buying heaven points or something. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that like, they're doing what God wants them to do, not really what I don't know. It feels good to be charitable, right? But I also feel that, they feel that that is what is right for them and it aligns with their moral code. But if you don't believe that, I feel like you would be forcing yourself to do those things,
Mm.
you
So
know?
you would take that argument and you would say the belief matters, not just partaking in the rituals. And
Yes.
you, as an agnostic, even if you went through the motions with the rituals and were a part of a community, you feel like because the belief's not there, that the benefits might not necessarily apply, like, greater happiness and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say so. I think that like everybody in the hierarchy of needs, right? Everybody needs community and security and uh, fulfillment and things like that. And I feel like church for a lot of people can provide that. But if you find that it doesn't provide that, going to that place and doing those things, I don't think you won't reap those same benefits.
Okay.
Whether that's because you believe, or I know plenty of people who just go because they like the people there. They don't even really believe, and they go along to get along kind of thing. Everyone else is donating to the charity. I'll throw $5 in the basket,
Gotcha.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so in my estimation, the best way to live is to just find something that's fulfilling for you and meets your needs as a human being.
Gotcha.
And you know, if someone wants to be part of a religious organization and that fulfills their needs, and yeah, by all means, go ahead. You know, I have no qualms with that.
So it sounds like you're not going to be going to the local Lutheran church and signing up. Is that right?
Yeah, probably not. But if my
Well, all
wife
right.
wants to go, then we're off to the church.
So I guess we'll turn to our final question for the interview conversation with Hunter. In my experience with those who have left the faith, there are a lot of different reasons they'll give. There's sometimes people are just it's don't think it's that important. Sometimes there's trauma and abuse. They've had a really bad experience. Sometimes it's intellectual, like it sounds like yours is, just some questions weren't being answered. But with all the conversations I've heard, I haven't heard them all. So just for, I guess, disclaimer, very few people say they left because of Jesus. Jesus is the central figure to Christianity, according to Christian Orthodox tradition. Fully God, fully man, died on the cross for our sins. You've heard all that and you understand all that. So I guess my question to you, Hunter, as we head towards the end of our conversation, what are your thoughts on Jesus, his life, his ministry, his teachings right now? What do you think of him?
For me, I personally think that we don't like are we talking about Jesus, the actual person, or what we know about Jesus through the Gospels? Because like I feel like what we know about Jesus through the Gospels is kind of unreliable. I feel like there's definitely been a lot of legend making in the thousands of years that you know the Bible's been around.
Okay.
Uh, but you know, um, what's in the Bible, I don't really have any qualms with. I mean, there's obviously like controversial teachings, in the Bible that Jesus has taught, but I think that all of those things, or the contentious issues of today that people take from the Bible,
Yeah.
like if you believe it, then you have to believe it, right? That's kind of the way
Yeah.
that it is. So
So you would say that can't really trust the gospels to give us an accurate depiction of Jesus the person, Jesus the historical figure. So we really don't know a lot about him. Would you say that? And so it's not that you like him or don't like him, you just think what we have about him's flawed and we don't really know him and what he was about. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say so. But I think that again, like his teachings in the Bible, like I don't really have any problem with that.
Got you. Okay. So definitely you wouldn't consider him like Lord and Savior because that would make you a Christian.
Right.
But I guess from the Bible, would you say something along the lines of he's what we read in the Bible, regardless of the historical figure, he's like would you say a good teacher, good preacher kind of? Would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, I would say he's a radical teacher. Uh, Definitely subverting expectations of the time.
okay. Controversial figure and okay, radical. I think hey, I'm a Christian. I'll agree with those things. So, anyways, Hunter, that concludes the questions I have. You're welcome to ask any if you have any on your end. But I really appreciate you coming on with me, having this conversation. I know that you live far away, and I don't get to see you in person as much as I'd like. But thank you for doing this.
Yeah, of course. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. It was
Absolutely.
good to kind of collect everything.
Yeah, yeah. Well, friends, more videos will come out as time goes on. Be on the lookout, like, share, subscribe, let other people know. Again, very thankful for Hunter, and we'll talk with you later.